They always say God speaks in the silence. But what if the silence has an impostor? What if that midnight call isn't a cry for help, but a spiritual setup dressed like a need? Some doors don't swing open, they ring. And the moment you answer, you're no longer in control. Tonight, we're not just talking about phone calls. We're talking about gateways, about spirits hiding in urgency, and about how the enemy uses exhaustion as a disguise. So before you pick up again at 2 a.m., ask yourself, is this God calling you? Or is it a trap? It's strange how quiet the world becomes after midnight. The noise dies down, the streets go still, and the distractions of the day slip into silence. But don't let that stillness fool you. Midnight may be calm on the surface, but in the spirit it's a battlefield. It's not just an hour on the clock, it's a portal, and what comes through it isn't always holy. You see, the enemy doesn't knock when the sun is shining and your spirit is full. He waits for the hour when your defenses are low, when your mind is heavy and your body is too tired to fight. That's when he makes his move. He doesn't need a door when he can use a phone. He doesn't need to shout when a whisper will do, and it always seems to come in the form of a call. Just one ring in the darkness that feels urgent, emotional, heavy. You think it's someone in need, but sometimes it's not a need, it's bait. Not all interruptions are divine. Not every midnight knock is Jesus. Some are dressed to look like light, but carry shadows on their breath. That's why midnight must never be approached casually. It is sacred time. It is testing time, and it is trap time, depending on who you're listening to. The truth is, God speaks in the stillness too, but his voice brings peace. His interruptions don't leave you anxious, breathless, or broken. They don't steal your rest or fill your room with confusion. They come like a whisper of knowing, a gentle stirring, not a flood of panic. The enemy's goal is always the same. Disturb your atmosphere, derail your alignment, and distract your purpose. And midnight is his playground. We've been taught to answer when people call, to rush when people cry, to sacrifice rest for response. But wisdom doesn't respond to every sound. Wisdom waits. Wisdom prays. Wisdom knows that just because something comes through the gate doesn't mean it belongs in the house. Your soul is not a public park. It is holy ground, and midnight is a sacred shift where heaven downloads secrets, but only if you're still enough to receive them. There's something about that hour that draws out desperation from both heaven and hell. It's where cries echo louder and spirits move freer. It's no coincidence that some of your most intense spiritual warfare happens not at 3 in the afternoon, but at 3 in the morning. That's not random. That's a realm, and if you don't know how to guard it, you'll be wide open for invasion. Sometimes that late night call isn't from a friend, it's from a spirit attached to them. It's not always the voice that matters. It's the assignment riding on that voice. You answer thinking you're helping a person, but you're really opening the gate to a warfare you weren't meant to fight. You respond with love, and that's good. But love must be led by discernment, not emotion. Jesus didn't respond to every cry. He didn't move just because someone was loud. He moved when the Father spoke, and that's your model. That's your blueprint. Before you pick up the phone, pick up the discernment. Before you say hello, say, Holy Spirit, is this for me? Because once you let it in, you have to deal with what comes through. And don't think the enemy doesn't study your patterns. He knows your heart. He knows you're compassionate. He knows you care deeply. That's why he doesn't come at you with a sword. He comes at you with a story, a sad one, a stressful one, a manipulative one that makes you feel responsible when you were never called. One that leaves you awake all night, carrying burdens that don't belong to you. Because if he can't kill you, he'll wear you down. And if he can't defeat you in daylight, he'll invade your midnight. Some doors look like opportunities, but they're really open windows for warfare. Some calls sound like emergencies, but they're really distractions dressed up in emotion. The enemy doesn't just roar. He mimics, he imitates, he pretends. He knows the language of urgency because he knows it short. Sir, it's your discernment. But when you slow down, when you pause and ask heaven, when you let silence lead before speech, you start to see it for what it is. Midnight is where your spiritual posture matters most. It's where discernment must be louder than impulse. It's where you decide whether to answer the call or let God answer it for you. And sometimes the most anointed thing you can do is not pick up. There's a difference between a cry for help and a calculated cry for your attention. And sometimes in the stillness of midnight, the enemy knows just what tone to use, just what story to tell, just what bait to drop to pull you into someone else's storm. You were resting. You were finally settling into peace. But then that call came out of nowhere, and now your chest is tight, your heart is racing, and your sleep has vanished into thin air. Was it really a cry for help, or was it a spirit trying to hook itself onto yours? We live in a world that teaches us to always be available, always be reachable, always be on. But heaven doesn't operate on the demands of the desperate. Heaven moves through order, not chaos. And some cries, no matter how urgent they sound, aren't asking to be healed. They're asking to drain. They don't come looking for hope. They come carrying heaviness, ready to latch onto your light. If you're not careful, you'll confuse ministry with manipulation. And hear this, you can be full of love and still be wise enough to say no. You can care deeply and still guard your peace. Not every situation that crosses your path is your cross to carry. Not every voice deserves an answer just because it reaches out. Jesus knew this well. When Lazarus died, he didn't run. He waited because divine timing matters, because emotions don't set the pace, obedience does. We get caught in traps not because we're weak, but because we're wired to help. Especially when it sounds like someone is breaking. But some voices don't want healing. They want a host, a place to unload, not to grow, a heart to pour into, not to rise with. And if you're not discerning, their spiritual warfare will find a seat in your sanctuary. There are calls that carry no demons, only deliverance. But there are others soaked in confusion, fear, torment. And those spirits know what they're doing. They know the power of a midnight interruption. They know you've lowered your guard in compassion. They know you won't pause to pray because your heart is already rushing toward rescue. And that's when the shift happens. That's when your spirit starts to take on weight that wasn't meant for it. That's when you start to feel heavy, burdened, unsure, and you don't even know why. That's why discernment is not optional in this hour. It is armor, it is covering, it is a shield, because people will sound broken when they're really just borrowing your strength. They'll say they're lost when really they're dragging you into their wilderness. And if you say yes to every cry, you'll find yourself stretched thin, burnt out, and wondering how you ended up in battles that were never yours to begin with. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop and ask, is this a test or a trap? Is this my assignment? Or is this a spirit seeking access through the disguise of need? Because once you say yes, once you open that door, you're no longer just hearing their voice. You're inviting their atmosphere into your space. And let me tell you something. God never calls you into chaos without equipping you with clarity. His voice may challenge you, but it will never confuse you. His call may be uncomfortable, but it won't be chaotic. So when that midnight call comes, when that text shows up out of nowhere, pause, breathe. Listen, and if your spirit doesn't feel peace, don't pick it up. Some cries are just echoes of old chains trying to find a new home. Don't let them in, don't let them in. There's a moment somewhere between the fading echoes of the day and the silence of the night, where your body feels heavy, your thoughts slow down, and your guard begins to loosen. That's when the enemy slips in, not with violence, not with thunder, but with a quiet ring, a familiar name on the screen, a message marked urgent. And suddenly, without warning, you're pulled from rest into reaction. It doesn't seem dangerous. In fact, it looks like someone needs you. But understand this, the enemy is a student of your soul. He knows exactly when you're tired enough to mistake a trap for a test. When you're exhausted, you're more likely to say yes without praying. When your spirit is drained, your defenses lower, your boundaries blur, and your heart becomes more vulnerable than you realize. The enemy waits for those moments. He doesn't just watch what you do in the daylight. He studies how you weaken at night. He knows the patterns. He sees how strong you are when the sun is up and your armor is on. So he waits until you start peeling off your peace, loosening your guard, and slipping into stillness. That's his window. That's his hour. This is why it's not just about who calls. It's about asterisk when asterisk they call. That midnight ring may not be coming from the person, but from the spirit attached to them. And when you're tired, your spirit may not catch it in time. You'll pick up because your heart is good, but you'll hang up feeling heavy, because that wasn't a conversation. It was a spiritual exchange. That wasn't a friend needing advice. It was warfare disguised as vulnerability. Don't underestimate the timing of your attacks. Some spirits don't show up when you're ready for them. They show up when you're almost asleep, hoping you'll open the door before you realize who's on the other side. Because when you're tired, discernment can dim. You'll mistake confusion for compassion, pressure for purpose, urgency for God. But God doesn't manipulate. God doesn't rush. God doesn't panic. You have to start asking yourself, why do these calls always come when I'm finally finding peace? Why does the weight always arrive just as I'm settling into rest? That's not coincidence, that's strategy. The enemy knows your light shines brightest when you're rested, focused, and aligned. So his job is to make sure you never get their asterisk. And the easiest way to do that isn't to attack you directly. It's to keep you busy, not blessed, not effective, just distracted. You weren't created to be constantly available. You weren't designed to carry every burden that dials your number. God gave you a calling, not a collection of crises. And you have to protect that calling like it's life itself, because it is. Your purpose isn't just a mission. It's a target. And when you're too tired to see the arrows coming, you'll start bleeding from battles you weren't meant to fight. So the next time that phone rings after midnight and your soul is telling you something's off, don't ignore it. That feeling, that check in your spirit, that's heaven tugging on your heart, saying wait. Don't move yet. Don't open the gate. Because some calls don't just wake you up. They bind you up. And you'll spend days trying to recover from something you could have avoided in a moment of stillness. Your tiredness is holy. Your rest is sacred. And the enemy knows that if he can't destroy you in public, he'll exhaust you in private. Don't let him. You've got too much to build, too much to carry, too much fire still in you, so guard your night. Guard your peace, and guard your yes, because the tired version of you is still chosen, still anointed, still a threat, and sometimes your silence in the face of distraction is your loudest victory.